Hi, I'm Melvin Way. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is one of my hiking videos, but it's sort of disguised as 40 days after the San Marcos Cocos Fire of 2014, which happened in mid-May. So 40 days later, we've had virtually no rain, and I'm going to go on this Lakehead View Trail on the top of San Elijo Hills next to the Twin Peaks, and this will overlook downtown San Marcos below. So normally I'm a stickler for detail, and I have all these annotations and talk a lot about botany and the facts surrounding various species of plants, but I don't have all that much time. I feel like if I do the research and identify every species and then talk about it in detail, I'll never get this video out, as my hiking videos tend to be very long, sometimes up to half an hour. So I just wanted you to have a heads up, and if there's anything that you're not interested in, just kind of hover your cursor over the time bar and go forward and see if there's anything you like in the preview thumbnails. At 22x zoom here from afar, even your heartbeat can cause the camera to shake. So this is non-zoomed footage again. It's just a chaparral near the trail up close. Some of it grows up to 3 meters, and there are trees that can reach up to 6 meters high, but those are sort of a rarity. Here you can see laurel sumac just kind of sprouting. None of this was burned. This is just laurel sumac flanking the hiking trail early on, and it's getting ready to flower. It's said that the majority of the smell or the fragrance that comes from the hills and the chaparral is derived from laurel sumac and from its evaporating organic volatile compounds. So this is Mission manzanita. It grows everywhere as well. It's a nice manzanita, but the color of the bark, the wood isn't as conspicuous in many of these smaller plants. And here the foliage just grows kind of dense. They're curved. That has some advantages, because the water vapor is lost through the backside of the leaves. So having them curled up like that reduces a little bit of water loss. The wood is a very beautiful sort of reddish brown. And none of these trunks are very thick at this point, but this is one of the younger plants, and plus, like, having curled leaves means that the leaf surface can absorb light from all directions, reflecting from various other objects or even other leaves that are waxy. So those are good adaptations for growth in the sunny chaparral, where there's very limited moisture. As you can see, the extent of the burn is pretty devastating. Got nearly all the way to Cal State San Marcos. Most of this Twin Oaks Road was jeopardized and had to be evacuated, but it didn't get significantly past that. After the hillsides and this kind of chaparral community have been burned, it looks very sparse. It looks like just a few twigs sticking up. When you get closer, they look much bigger, but it's just so sparse and bizarre compared to what I'm used to seeing. This is Ramona lilac. It has very, very little, sparse leaves that, aren't quite the shape of dimes, but they're the size of dimes, basically. And the leaves have these, like, black dots on the edges. This has a very beautiful bloom display. I think last year, 2013, it was actually in March, but this year we're in an exceptional drought and there's been nothing. So I haven't seen these light blue blooms all over San Diego like I did last year. As I've mentioned in some recent videos, California is in a state of exceptional drought. It hasn't been this dry for 500 years, and a pair of rainstorms that dumped 5 inches of rain on most of Southern California did really nothing to change that. It's just a huge deficit. So I don't know what these are. These are adventitious shoots just coming out of the ground. I've seen this plant before a few times, but I don't know what it is. It's definitely not Ramona lilac. And here are the larger leaves and branches coming out on top. It's well, geez, it kind of resembles a lot of manzanitas, but it's not, I think. And then this is a plant that I featured in my Rancho Carrillo hiking trail video. in the very beginning of my YouTube channel. This is in Carlsbad, California, so it's not too far away, and it's got these beautiful red spikes and bristly thorns all over. The foliage is distinct from the foliage of all the other plants around, and the other plants don't have these kinds of spikes and bristles, so I'm wondering what their defenses are against mule deer. Probably, besides just unpleasant taste or a small amount of toxicity. So definitely mule deer, humans, and whatnot won't want to tangle with this plant. I can't imagine what other large herbivores would be around this area. Seems like there would be none, and obviously rabbits can't reach anywhere near this high. So it's really just mule deer and nothing else. So if you can evolve to have defenses against mule deer in this area, pretty much have nothing to worry about. It is noted that in the chaparral communities, these shrubs can grow up to the size of small trees and just become so dense that after 100 years of so-called old growth, basically no animal larger than maybe a coyote could squeeze in, really. So they're pretty much safe from large animal predators, bugs or another matter. But then again, I don't really see all that many bug bites on the leaves of any of these plants nearby. This looks like an animal trail to me because the beginning has too steep of an incline. This isn't man-made, and it's sort of overgrown, so I imagine animals like coyotes, mule deer, mountain lions, rabbits can run around through that path, although they might get ticks. Out of the whole trip, this was the thing that blew my mind the most, the sight of ferns growing in a hot chaparral environment. Just 40 days ago, it was, fierce winds, 3% humidity, and 40 Celsius heat. So these dead leaflets or fronds, whatever you call them for ferns, look like snake skins. They have these characteristic reproductive structures on the undersides of their leaves. So I saw a lot of them, but they only get to this size. And I'm used to seeing these things in rainforests or different kinds of environments like jungles on TV. Of course, I've never actually been in a jungle. Well, actually, maybe I have as a kid, but I don't remember any of that stuff. So this is, just pretty shocking sight. I don't know what to make of this. I don't know what species this is and how they got here. I'm assuming spores. I don't recall seeing these from riparian zones nearby. I see things more like yerba mansa, which kind of looks like a wild spinach or something like that. So these are lichens on rocks. They're actually in desert climates as well. So this is not all that shocking. Lichens or fungi that have formed a symbiotic relationship with other microorganisms that can photosynthesize, so they help each other out. It's estimated that 6% of the Earth's land surface is covered in lichens, which is an astonishing amount. Lichens have been exploited by people to make dyes, perfumes, and medicine. It's said that the morphology of lichens is vastly different from the two symbiont species, the fungi, and usually it's a cyanobacteria or green algae. I have no idea what this weed or small plant is. It just seems to grow everywhere in select environments. Some of the smaller things that don't really catch my eye in terms of aesthetics, just kind of go unreported because there's just too many things to talk about. The leaves look like this. If you're interested or knowledgeable about this sort of thing, I have no idea if it's a native plant or a weed. Looks like it could be a little bit dry environment adapted. The leaves look all fuzzy and resistant to evaporation, but that's the extent of my lack of knowledge on this plant. And these are some very beautiful manzanita branches. Got footage of this going on for another few minutes, so if you've had your fill you can skip ahead, but I definitely recommend staring for just a few more seconds at least, because the bark is really remarkable. It peels in the most interesting way, as you'll see up close in macro view pretty soon. The foliage is nice too, but it sort of resembles Yerba Santa, but it's not quite the same at all. And it's obviously a manzanita species with this reddish brown bark that peels like this. See, it makes all these coils, so I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this. I don't know if I've seen this in my travels before, or if I ever paid attention. For most people that's just the case. You don't pay attention to these things, and most people that come out here are joggers, so they're just blowing by, or they're just delirious from fatigue if they're more of the out of shape kind that are trying to get into shape. So they won't be paying attention to anything. The leaves have a lot of fuzz on them, so they appear dirty. Just any kind of dirt or silt will just get stuck on the hairs and be there forever unless a fire or a heavy rain blows through. So these things are just mesmerizing to look at up close for the bark. I have several other views of this. This almost doesn't look like it was something natural. It looks like something man-made in a construction project for grade schoolers, making crafts out of various materials. And I just don't know how to describe this thing. So if you know what species this is, please let me know, because as I mentioned before, there are just too many things to talk about and identify, and if I put that off as I did early on in my YouTube career, it would just take forever to get this video out. And for this, it's only been 2 days, which would be already a miracle compared to how long I'd sit on hiking footage in the past, sometimes for like a month or two before I'd finally gather up the resolve to sit down and start editing footage. So I'm just skimping on the looking up side of things and just presenting to you a lot of raw footage as is, with narration on the fly. This branch is really beautiful. So it sort of resembles used toilet paper rolls, just the cardboard in the middle, or ribbons, things like that, just curling up. The leaves do sort of have that Yerba Santa look and fuzz, in appearance. So this has a lot of fuzz on it that'll deter insect predators, but not something like a deer, although it probably tastes nasty to a deer, and that's why it's got leaves still, because it's a pretty sparse growing plant. It's not a thick, robust bush. So yeah, this unknown species of manzanita footage is rolling to an end. Hope you really like the bark of this species. Here's a little sapling, if you will. So this is a very robust fern specimen of the same species. Maybe it's 2 or 3 actually bunched together, and that's the last of the ferns. This is a path cleared by a bulldozer from firefighters 40 days ago when San Marcos Cocos Fire broke out. So there's an ant on this plant doing who knows what. I don't even know what species of ant that is. It's not California harvester ant, maybe some kind of carpenter ant. But this plant has interesting foliage, and it's obviously got a lot of bug activity because it has cobwebs on it as well. I just don't know what species this is. Yeah, it just kind of has a branch that lost most of its foliage. This bush is re-sprouting a little bit. It doesn't look like it was burned. It just looks like something that's not doing entirely too well in this environment, but it's still hanging on like a real champ. So I don't know what the deal with that is. Well, it looks like these are some young specimens of that same manzanita species that I just talked about, and it just another few shrubs came up and they look pretty healthy. They have that same very interesting bark. It seems to be growing much better in this area, probably because it's getting more light. It's open space right next to the trail, yet it still has the shade from the afternoon sun from taller plants behind. Now, this plant is just a mess at a distance. Some of these are just not very easy to understand when you're looking at a video because, you know, from a camera video you don't really focus. When I got up close to this plant, I noticed it was heavily infested by what I think are aphid colonies. Now, some of them have this powder white appearance because they've taken up so much extra sugar water from the plant that the sugar has crystallized. They've let some of that sap out, and they have that, you know, powder white appearance. I've seen this in other aphid infestations, although none that had aphids quite as large as this one. So yeah, I'm not quite sure what these things are. You know, it's just hard to identify bugs that small because the wind blows and then these branches and twigs are waving all over the place really fast, and in macro view it's just really hard to get a good look. But yeah, they're apparently some kind of insect predator to this plant. It resembles wild mustard, but it's not. It's sort of a bushy, viney thing with weird intertwining leaves. Never seen anything like that. So if you know any of these suspects, please call my species identification hotline or whatever. So this is you know, just more of the view in some places that have been burned. I'm at the fringe of an area where, you know, half of it's been burned and the other half to the other direction isn't. So it's a pretty bleak landscape. It's very desert-like in appearance, although I've already seen signs of regrowth. And as you can see, some of the burned leaves just have that autumn look because the leaves are all red. This is a good spot. It illustrates, you know, stuff that was just a few inches, few feet away and it wasn't burned. So you can see the fire extend all the way to the tip of the mountain at Twin Peaks there. And here you can see some laurel sumac regrowth in this forest of laurel sumac. This is after 40 days. And as you can see when you get up close, the foliage looks really nice. It's only going to look nice at this period and maybe the first year, and then, you know, pretty soon it just goes to being covered with bugs and cobwebs and crap like that. So, you know, it's just a very rare sight because this is not something you can see for very long, and it happens very rarely. I don't know how old the chaparral was in this area before it burned, but, you know, this is maybe a once in a lifetime opportunity. This is the wood of laurel sumac. It has a very beautiful manzanita-esque color to it. It's been burned in some places, although for the large part you can just peel off the ashen bark, and this whole area is covered in ash. So when I kicked a little bit of it up, it brought back a lot of the smells that I remembered from wildfires past. It smelled like the wildfire had just happened or it was ongoing in real time, and it'll smell that way probably for a long time. Until we've had at least a few rains. So this wood is actually burned in some places. It's a very, very hard and dense wood. I imagine that chaparral plants grow so slowly that the wood should be very, very hard. That's just the general rule for, you know, the hardness of wood. And I'm not quite sure if it's like ironwood type hard, but it's really, really solid compared to most of the woods we make furniture out of, or decks, things like that. So this is a scrub oak tree, I believe. You know, there are many kinds of oaks, and this might be the kind that just lives in a higher elevation, not too high. You know, not quite sure what kind of scrub oak that is, but you know, it basically exploded and the trunk became hollow from that fire. So I don't know if it's going to come back. I wouldn't be surprised either way. But this is, you know, one of those burned valleys. The fire just sweeps up very, very quickly because when you go up a steep slope, you know, fire and the heat travels upwards. So everything, you know, upwards of that along the valley just gets annihilated very, very quickly, whereas fire goes a lot slower downhill. And it also depends on wind and things like that. But of course, a valley like that would just funnel wind in either direction most of the time. So there's a funnel web, spiders, funnel web, and this is fennel. So fennel is an invasive species that is the first to come back among all the dead weeds that I've seen. It produces wood that's sort of like bamboo. It's segmented, it doesn't get very tall. Although in some cases, if it's got the right conditions, it can still get, almost as tall as a person. But, over here, it's not that, robust. But as you can see, it's sprouting already, just as quickly as the laurel sumac. And, here's some more laurel sumac regrowth. We're showing more footage of this. It responds at different rates, I guess depending on how badly everything was burned. The root systems store a lot of water and nutrients for situations like this. So as you can see, we're pretty close to downtown San Marcos, and the fire threatened a lot of homes. These trees have reacted with extreme vigor. I've never seen so many sprouts. Then again, this is the first time I'm seeing any of this, so compared to all the other specimens, these ones are doing really, really well. Again, it's kind of north-facing slopes, just north, not northeast or anything, but look at how many sprouts this tree is making. It's just amazing. And it's sort of like an overkill, like an overreaction to what, I would expect from this plant, because many of the other laurel sumac bushes only sent up a few shoots so far. So I'll have to wait a few weeks and see how all those other bushes respond, what directions they're facing and what kind of energy reserves I think they have, or, based on how badly they were burned, how much they have to come back by. But I think the old shoot systems, the trunks of wood, are all dead at this point. So what you see is the next generation of growth, although they're all the same individuals. They just never go away. And here's a mountain face. It has a lot of large trees, large for this region.